Welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over several ways that you can stay a beginner guitarist forever. So let's get started. Number one, method books. If learning out of books was really the way to get great, wouldn't the millions and millions of sales of these books reflect how many great guitarists there are? This is a cash grab. It's not really the way that you actually get good. It just sounds good on paper. It's a logical sounding system that doesn't actually apply because guitar playing is not just one topic. It's actually a whole bunch of different interrelated skills that each need to be worked on separately, but not a week apart either. Okay, so typically the biggest flaw in these things, it's not that they're not even well meant. I'm sure that they usually are, but it's just not actually how guitar playing works. You don't start with single note melodies and then somehow graduate to the completely separate skill of playing chords. It almost sounds logical because let's start with playing one note first and then we'll play more than one note. That's not a useful thing to slowly progress. In fact, you know where it's useful is to keep you coming back longer to lessons if your lessons are based on a book, because you're getting things trickled to you so slowly that you're going to have to keep coming back because you're not going to be anywhere yet, and you're going to really need those lessons for a long time. Really, you can just play the notes for 10 minutes and then play chords for 10 minutes and play some power chords for another 10 minutes, and even there, you got a half-hour practice session already kind of set up for you. You don't graduate between completely unrelated skills or even somewhat related skills. You just do all of them because you're at level 0 of all of them until you start doing them. Then you're at level 1. Then you work on level 2. Then you work on level 3, and you get a bunch of skills in. And that is the biggest flaw with learning from a book. Not only is it one size fits all, and it doesn't even take your actual personal goals into account, but it's kind of giving you nonsensical activities that don't lead to any kind of goal, and it really spreads it as thin as possible in an effort to make the book make sense. You can always navigate it, and it seems logical. They wrote a book, they must know what they're talking about, right? Maybe, maybe not, but that's no guarantee that the book's going to help you get anywhere. Number 2, gimmicky gadgets. For decades now, there's been no shortage of these gimmicky items that just come out seemingly every month or so, and especially since the internet, pretty much every 10 minutes there's a new one. Something being manufactured, implying or just outright claiming that it's going to revolutionize how you learn guitar and you're going to do it overnight and it's going to fix everything. And then they've got your money and you're not any better because they don't do anything. So you got your Grip Master and a bunch of other Grip Master knockoffs. And not that there's not a benefit to doing that, but it's not really a benefit to guitar playing because guitar playing isn't just a bunch of squeezing. And I'm naming Grip Master because it's one of the longest lasting kind of gimmicks that can help some people in some areas of life, but it really is not useful for musicians at all. In fact, what's better for a musician, for a guitar player in particular, is a freaking guitar. Grab a guitar, because there's a lot more to playing guitar than just squeezing. There's aim, you're not just pressing in 4 spots because you have 4 fingers. There's a lot of different places your fingers need to go. So if you want to learn how to play guitar, put down the Grip Master or other squeezing implement and grab your guitar, because that's actually the main tool. And of course there's a whole bunch of other little things that overpromise and underdeliver, and you'll know them when they come out because they pretty much add nothing to your playing, but they make these huge pie in the sky promises about your playing and your musical knowledge and how they simplify everything. Look, music is complicated to a degree. It seems more complicated than it is, mind you. But it's a little complicated. You're going to have to stop waiting for a shortcut and just dig in, get your hands dirty, and think a little bit, because thinking these thoughts and solving the problems that they present is how you get good at this stuff. So if it's a shortcut, it's a gimmick, and you're not going to help yourself by buying into it, but you will help someone else line their pockets with your money because you're looking for a shortcut. So there's your gimmicky gadgets. That's number 2. Number 3, guitar magazines. Yes, sorry, I've got hundreds of them personally, so don't get me wrong. I enjoy them. There is something very enjoyable about them. There is a lot of information in there. It can just be very interesting to hear different perspectives of people who have accomplished enough in their career that they are welcome to come back and write in a guitar magazine. I especially mean the columns. I think that's probably the most valuable information. in a guitar magazine. So I'm going to say that first before I tear them to shreds. Because here's what comes with magazines, okay? Think about what a magazine needs to do to survive. They need to keep selling issues. If they significantly improve your playing, why would you need any guitar magazines anymore? You know, if you kind of keep selling additional issues, especially when it comes with magazines, you see the same thing over and over and over again. The same handful of highly visible guitarists who you know you're not as good as, you know, generally, these people that are held up constantly on this pedestal, and they're just a you know, revolving door. Same select few that are always on the cover. It's always their songs. And it's just, this is the bread and butter of magazines. And so you have to remember that you're their customer. So remember, it's not really in their benefit for you to actually get much better from reading guitar magazines. If you see something you like in one, go ahead, grab it. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, but don't become reliant on them, because that is not what they're in business to do. They're in business to glorify guitar playing and get you to buy another issue based on guitarists that they know that most people like, and to offer you transcriptions of songs that you might not have been able to figure out on your own, maybe you didn't want to figure out on your own, maybe you don't trust your own ears to figure it out on your own, maybe you struggle to figure it out on your own and you don't feel like you got it right and you're kind of feeling defeated. But a lot of reasons can come into play why you aren't doing it on your own and trust somebody else, especially if it's being printed in a magazine. It's sort of a sense of this is an authority on the topic, right? Because they're making a magazine, right? Maybe not. I have seen official tablature books with mistakes. I'm looking at you, Wolf Marshall, with the Iron Maiden Peace of Mind book. You know, and he's a great guitarist. He just, you know, he's not in Iron Maiden. He doesn't really have a vested interest in making sure that Iron Maiden fans get exactly that particular song right. So you look at the Trooper tablature in the official Iron Maiden book and you'll see that error. It's really clear. If you have ears, you'll notice if you start playing it that way, it's wrong. So if it's wrong in the official tablature book, why would you expect just people that tab songs out based on their own ears? They can get a good enough version for you because you're just a person buying a magazine, remember? So there's a lot that comes with relying on magazines. Now, that kind of brings us to number 4, because there is some overlap here, and that is over-reliance on tablature. Sorry, tablature is training wheels. Okay, now let's look at this, and I really mean it. It's training wheels. There's nothing wrong with training wheels. When you want to learn how to ride a bike, if you don't have training wheels, you're probably going to fall and possibly hurt yourself. Okay, you kind of need training wheels. They exist for a reason, to get you started. If 10 years down the line you're still riding a bike with training wheels on it, however, you got to ask yourself, what am I doing here? Okay, because that's sort of what I mean with tablature being training wheels. If you keep playing for years and years and years, and everything is completely dependent on tablature that someone else has to make for you based on what they can hear, maybe their ears aren't even trained, maybe they don't know what they're talking about, or any other number of other reasons why an error could creep into it. You have to learn to trust your own ears, not someone else's ears. You know, who puts internet tablature online? Sure, guitar teachers, professional guitarists. Also 12-year-olds, right after school, they got nothing else to do. People that don't know anything yet, but they can mess around on the guitar and find most of the notes or some of the notes. They'll get the chords, the notes wrong, the rhythm wrong. You've got to learn to trust your ears, because if you're making a mistake, at least it's your mistake and you can kind of listen again and be like, no, that's not right. And then you can play along until you do get it right. Or you can go consult a teacher. More on that later, though. So, over-reliance on internet tabs. Remember, they're training wheels. You start with them. When you need to tackle a new concept, you might need to look at it in tab. That's fine. It's there for a reason. It's a tool. But you don't use a hammer for everything, right? It's the same idea there. Don't use the same tool forever. It's a purpose. It's a transitional moment when you're trying to tackle a new idea. But really, if you have to pick a kind of format for materials, go with either musical notation from other instruments. Force yourself to think about music, the language, not just guitar, okay? Because music is the main language. This is a dialect of the language. Violin is a dialect of the language. Piano is a dialect to approach that same language, and they're all going to have their own kind of unique mechanical requirements because of the way the instrument's designed to be played, but it's one language. So use notation, because you get out of this fretboard, which fret, which string thing, because there's a lot of ways to play any given melody on the guitar in particular. So because there's so many strings, you have multiple locations of every single possible melody, and it's going to use different fingers and different kind of shapes in order to play them. So if you had to pick one format, diagrams. Learn where the notes are, learn what the relationships between them are. Scale degrees, okay? That's in fact with Shredmentor, that is exactly why I make the diagrams the way I do, with visible scale degrees, not a bunch of black dots, because they're not all the same ingredient in the scale, so we're not going to use the same symbol for everything, and that's kind of a problem with a lot of the scale books. Which brings us to number 5, scale books. Entirely reliant on scale books kind of leaves you in the same spot because of that exact reason. You've got a bunch of black dots. We know where the notes are, but we don't know what the individual notes are. Now, that's not the same as saying if I know that's a B and that's a C sharp and that's a D. I mean, if I know where the notes on my fretboard are, cool, that's fine. It doesn't tell me what they do in the hierarchy of the scale, or the actual scale itself contains different notes that play off of each other differently because of how far apart they are. It's not because of which notes, it's because of how far apart those notes are. And that's why I can take a minor scale and move it anywhere else and play it exactly the same way and still get a minor sound, because I'm maintaining the relative spacing of the notes. So it will give you that to look at a bunch of black dots, but the format that most scale diagrams have been in, as long as there have been guitar scale books, is very lacking, because if you just use the same symbol for every single note, you won't know which note is which. Here's another analogy. Think of a spice cabinet in your kitchen. You're trying to make something, but every single bottle is identical because you've taken them out of the thing that has the label on them and you've put it into identical containers. How will you know which one is salt and which one is cinnamon and which one is sugar and which one is basil? You won't. So just start randomly sprinkling stuff in. You won't know what's what. Even if you have 7 spices that you know go together, if they all look the same, how the hell are you supposed to know which one's which? That's the problem with black dots as representing all the notes. Yeah, I know where they are. They're in my kitchen cabinet, but I don't know which spice is which. And it's the same thing. Each note flavors the scale a certain way. That's why I'm using spices, because that's really what your individual notes are all going to do. They're all going to add a different kind of flavor into the overall dish. Number 6, playing by yourself all the time in total isolation and without even having any kind of backing track. Okay, 2 parts to this, really. I could have made 6 and 7 out of this, but bedroom guitarists, they kind of catch a lot of hell as it is already. It's easy to dismiss a bedroom guitarist, but here's why. I mean, yeah, that's where a lot of your practice is probably going to happen. It's possibly in your bedroom. Maybe if your studio is somewhere else in the house, it's a different room in your house, but the idea of just sitting there and not doing anything really serious, you're not on stage, you're not recording an album probably. Maybe your studio is in your bedroom and that's an exception, but generally when it's something that people are making fun of, obviously it's not. The problem is you're just there by yourself, playing a guitar by itself in the room, and you don't hear anything else. There's no other music to interact with. There's nothing to interact with in harmony or with rhythm. So it ends up, you can end up hitting a wall much sooner, and you're basically not going to be able to get past this certain barrier until you're actually interacting with music in some other way. So it can't just be you and your guitar by yourself in a room forever. Because here, all right, let's take it a scale, for example. We just talked about fretboard diagrams and scales and not having them properly represented. Let's say you do know what every single note in the scale is in terms of its scale degree number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, let's use A minor here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's your 1, okay? You know how they work. Here's your root, your third, your fifth, you know, and here's your 4th, your 6th, and your 2. Here's a minor, triad, all that stuff. You even know your scale in and out, but you've never used it along to a backing track. What's that worth? Are you going to know which note to play at which time? What about when the chord changes? Which 3 notes are going to make the melody sound resolved on that chord change from chord A to chord B to chord C as you're going through? And I'm not saying necessarily A minor and B diminished and C major, but what if it was? Which notes do you land on right on the moment of the chord change? You're not going to get that until you start doing it. Okay, so you're only going to be able to understand music theory so much until you're actually interacting with the music. So that's where isolation really, that's the first part of it, is that you're just, I mean, even a backing track, really, that's generally what I use, is a backing track or a piece of music that sort of is a backing track because it's a song that I am writing and working on while recording it. So having recorded music, at the very least, whether it's a backing track someone else makes, or better yet, one that you make, and it's based on chord progressions and riffs that you yourself are coming up with, because there's more incentive to work on your own stuff. But having something to interact with, multi-track recording software, you know, it doesn't have to be expensive. Reaper is like $60. You just need a recording interface and a half-decent computer, and you're up and running. And there's YouTube tutorials out the wazoo that you can follow in order to learn how to use that. But that will at least get you started. Even if your recordings sound like crap, it'll give you a chance to interact with what you're doing. So that's the first problem with isolation. The other half is also just never working with anyone else. The isolation of not actually interacting with other musicians is also going to be extremely stifling to your ability to advance as a musician, because all you have are your own facilities. You're only relying on what you yourself have already learned. You can't teach yourself what you don't know. You don't even know what you don't know yet. And that's not about nothing wrong with you. That's just the problem with learning. You can't teach yourself what you don't know, especially if you don't know what you don't know yet. And again, guitar playing is not even just one topic. There's so many little separate disciplines that just all bleed into each other, and there's a lot of overlap, but they are all separate, and they all need quality time in order to fully develop them and be able to use them at will to just spontaneously create great sounding music. So that's not the hallmark of a beginner guitarist, of course. That is an actual advanced or professional guitar player. So without ever interacting, even if you don't end up doing it for the long run, it would just never getting outside of your own head and interacting with other people and getting a feel for like what actually comes into play, what things are actually important. Let's say you get a band together and get on stage, you're going to learn a lot of things that you need to know, and you're going to find that, you know, some of the stuff that's presented that we think we're supposed to do and everybody says you're supposed to do, some of that just doesn't apply, like method books and gimmicky gadgets and guitar magazines. Like, you don't bring those things on stage with you, do you? I hope not, right? And tablature, all these things. Think of it. Think of the stage as the litmus test for what actually matters. None of the things I've talked about so far really belong on stage. So there's an idea. Now, if you're not trying to play on stage, whatever. Enjoy them in the privacy of your home, fine. But just remember that the ability to be a musician and hold your own and, you know, just pretty much do whatever you need to do in the moment without having to rely on a reference material or use some other tool or training wheels to prop you up for the moment, and then every time you try to do it again you need that tool. If you have to like refer to a diagram, even though I recommend diagrams over everything, if you have to keep referring to the diagram, you haven't memorized it yet, so it's not really your knowledge yet. So that brings us to number 7. Not memorizing anything. We keep thinking about all the stuff that you have to learn and practice and stuff, but guitar playing is 100% mental. All right, a lot of people say things, some particular discipline is 99% mental. No, it isn't. It's 100% mental. Anything that you're doing needs to be 100% mental, because your brain literally controls every movement that your body makes. Okay, so in order to do anything coordinated and with control, your brain needs to absolutely fully understand what your hands need to do before your hands start doing anything. Because that's when you start getting sloppy, is because your hands aren't actually an implement of thinking at all. They're controlled by your brain. Your muscles are all controlled by your brain. So it's 100% mental. There's just also a physical side to it. Okay, so not doing the thinking, not committing things to memory in order for them to be knowledge with which to think, is a huge handicap. So start memorizing what you learn, because if you haven't memorized it, you haven't learned it. You don't know it yet. Knowledge requires memory. Number 8, and the final thing, refusing to ever commit to actual paid lessons. This does kind of bleed into almost all of these other things. It's very, very appealing to imagine yourself just self-teaching yourself and becoming the next Eddie Van Halen or whoever else you know of that famously taught themselves and never took lessons. that is sort of a fluke. It's not that you can't. I self-taught almost entirely. I did take some lessons, and here's, as someone mostly self-taught, here's what I'll tell you the problem is. You have to do trial and error on everything, okay? And that means it's going to take you friggin' forever to get where you could get in a much shorter time, okay? So now I'm playing like I want to, but I wasted probably about a decade and a half doing it. If you want to do that, go right ahead, you know, and it is pleasing. Yes, I feel very proud of what I've accomplished considering how much the odds were stacked against me. They didn't need to be. I was a bit broke during the time when I probably would have wanted to take lessons, but I also didn't know where to go. So I was learning. I have an excuse a little bit, and I'm in the same end predicament anyways, that I lost about a decade and a half of my life before I was able to actually reach the level where I wanted to be. And I can play how I want to now, and that's great, but and I'm always advancing, mind you. I'm not like done. There's no end. You're approaching the horizon. As far as you go, you're still just as far from the horizon. That is learning. The more you learn, the more you find you need to learn. That said, I could have been this satisfied with my playing 15 years earlier. So yeah, that's that, and there's no getting that time back. So that's the problem. I never committed to lessons. I also was doing this at a time mostly before I had the internet, so it wasn't as widespread. It wasn't as easy to figure out who's who, how to reach out to my favorite guitarists. My favorite guitarists were like hugely famous, were not doing lessons as a career, and therefore really weren't even an option. I was listening to like Iron Maiden and Iced Earth, and they were touring. There wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to be like taking lessons from these folks. That's not what they do for a living. They are guitar idols for other people, not people who are giving lessons to people. So that wasn't an option for me, and I don't think it occurred to me. But now you have me telling you, so it should occur to you, because I'm telling you right now. Get lessons. A lot of people do like anything they can to avoid actually doing lessons. So this almost kind of overlaps with number 2, which was the gimmicky gadgets, but there's now gimmicky services in the age of the internet, things like Musician and Fender Play and things like that. I'm sure there's some fun to that, and if you don't have really high goals, maybe you'll be able to have some fun with it. But really, these are not replacements for a person guiding you from where you are right now, assessing what you are struggling with specifically, prescribing a specific course of action, and getting you to point B. There's just no comparison that can't even hold a candle. Don't be one of these people that just looks for every possible way to resist actually committing to lessons, because what you're doing is not just avoiding an expense. I get that. It's scary to take on additional bills, especially if you're already struggling. But what it really does is makes it so that you keep looking for a magic pill. It makes you comfortable to continue trying to look for what you want the answer to actually be, okay? And without having actually achieved it, once again, you don't know what you don't know, so you don't really know what's going to work yet. So I'm not saying just get any lessons either, by the way. Get lessons that are specifically with a teacher who focuses on your specific goals. Don't just go with a teacher. Make sure your criteria isn't just because they were close by or because they were cheap, okay? Because you get what you pay for, and especially when it comes to music lessons. When you find the cheapest teacher in town, it's because they're not secure in their teaching yet. They have no other way to be competitive other than to lower their price. So beware, because while they might just be perfectly good at it, they're probably not. They're not very secure about it because they haven't really gotten any results yet. Because once you start getting results, you get confident. I am confident because I've gotten a lot of results for a lot of people. So trust me on this one. Get a teacher that teaches according to specific goals and cares about specific results. So if they're using a method book, as I've said here, that's one size fits all. That's lazy. That's just, it keeps their life easy as a teacher, but it doesn't mean it's going to actually get anything for you. You're just going to be going down the conveyor belt just like everybody else. What if your doctor did that? You go to your doctor and they do the exact same thing for you that they do for everybody that comes in the door. That's not good. You need to actually have somebody who's paying attention to you and what you're there for. So you need to think about your goals a little bit. for an idea of what I'm talking about is specific types of goals, okay? Because it's very easy to be like, be the best guitar player is my goal. That's not really useful, okay? Think about specific scenarios. So here's an example. Go to shredmentor.com, just click on the red button anywhere, and there's a couple of them up and down the main page. There's going to take you to a form, okay? You can fill it out or not. If you want to actually meet with me and set up a free introductory lesson and actually maybe even move forward with lessons, go ahead and fill it out. But just right now, look at what the questions are. That is the thing that I want you to look at. Think about those things, because I've had a lot of people even tell me this, that when they fill those things out, these are not things that they've even thought about before. That's the effect I want that form to have on you. I want this video and those thoughts to enter your mind and start thinking about, what are your actual goals? What do you want to see? What do you want to have happen right now? What do you want to have happen on stage? What do you want to have happen creatively for yourself? Look at that right now. Go to shredmentor.com and just look at the form. And like I said, if you want to, fill it out and contact me. Only if you're serious about doing it, though, because I have a lot of students that do need my time right now. So like, I have more slots, but I want to make sure that it's only for people that are really serious about getting real results and are ready to do the work and commit to time for several months, at least, if not several years, because that really is what it takes. You know, you're not going to become amazing overnight. Remember what I said about gimmicky gadgets and they're over-promising. I'm not over-promising. You're gonna have to work your butt off, and I'm going to teach you how to work smart, though, not just hard work. And I guess that sort of brings us to an extra bonus problem that can help you make sure that you stay a beginner forever. And it's mistaking hard work as all being equal, okay? Don't just work hard, work smart. Because if you work hard on the wrong thing, you're not going to get anywhere. You can just bust your ass constantly working on the wrong thing, or working on something ineffectively, or giving not enough time to something that you don't get anywhere, or giving way too much time to something and just squandering what time you had available on like one thing. A lot of people will do that. Here's an example. You feel like you need to just really get your alternate picking down or something. I'm just going to grab alternate picking because it can be something that people struggle with. You keep hitting the wrong string, you keep tripping up, you keep accidentally doubling up, or whatever the problem is, and you feel like, okay, I'm gonna just nail this. I'm really gonna just get to work on my alternate picking. And you proceed to sit down for an hour a day or several hours a day, and you just work on nothing but your alternate picking because you're so determined to get that better. Do you know what you've done that way? You have sacrificed the opportunity to work on anything else, and everything else that you're not working on is actually sliding backward. You're losing progress on everything else that you have gotten good at because it's not getting regular rotation. Your hands are not returning to those movements. You're just focusing on one new thing, and you're only going to get so much better at that thing today, okay? You will, if you keep working on it every day, you will get better, but don't waste your entire practice session on one thing. That's one of the things I see people do so much. It just makes me cringe because I understand the thinking. It sounds totally logical, but there's only so much you're actually going to accomplish today. Progress is gradual. It can be relatively fast, and it is completely dependent upon you and how you learn best. That kind of goes back to the lessons. Pick someone that also is paying attention to you and how you learn best and is willing to evolve a bit and adjust how they teach you in a way that helps you learn faster and progress faster. But getting back to using your time well, structure your time. You know, don't work on one thing every day. That's just a recipe for going as slow as possible. Work on, let's say, if you have an hour, here's a kind of a starter thing that I give people just to make sure they're covering like 6 times as much stuff. If you can secure 1 hour to practice every day, take 6 specific techniques. Think about picking techniques. Think about fretboard techniques like hammer-ons, pull-offs, legato scales, trills, sequences. I'm big on the sequences. I wrote the book of sequences. That's a main ingredient in what I practice. But pick 6 specific things that you're going to work on and spend 10 minutes on each one of them. And don't do anything but that for each of those 10 minutes. Use a timer. Don't waste your time staring at the clock to see how far into the 10 minutes you're at. Just use your phone or a kitchen timer or just anything. 100% concentration. Remember, it's 100% mental. So you need to be fully concentrating on what you're doing. But 10 minutes will do it. Don't waste the whole hour on one of those things. You're only going to be so much better at each one of them, but at least you've covered 6 times as much more ground today than you would have if you just spent the whole hour doing one thing. Now, one other thing about that too, while we're on that. According to science, you can really only concentrate optimally for about 52 minutes. We can round it up to an hour. You're kind of getting into the flow, and some of it's autopilot once you're using the right tools for the job and you're kind of flowing with the rhythm of the music as you're practicing. But there, according to science, studies have shown that the quality of your concentration drops off dramatically after 52 minutes, and then you need about a 17-minute break. Okay, so again, you can read the article, or you can actually click on the other video that I refer to this in. Anyway, though, so that's a whole bunch of ways that you can stay a beginner or not. So hopefully this gives you some food for thought. Watch this over and over, and don't forget to share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe, because that means a lot to me, and I have a lot more where this came from. So until next time, rock on, my friend.